The boardroom was tense. David, one of Nigeria's wealthiest men, was about to sign away his empire when a little boy burst through the doors. "Don't do it!" he shouted. The room froze. Who was this boy? And how did he dare to stop a billionaire? But when David looked at him, something strange happened. He saw his own reflection in the child's eyes. The truth soon be revealed. 7 years earlier, his wife, Helen, had framed their poor maid and thrown her into the streets, hiding the fact that she carried David's own child. Now, the child they rejected had returned, not only with the power to save David's empire, but with the truth that would destroy Helen forever. Helen lived in a golden mansion, surrounded by wealth and luxury. But she carried a terrible secret. She had no womb. And though her husband, David, the billionaire, longed for a child, she could never give him one. She hid this truth carefully, fearing the day it would be exposed. One afternoon, as she passed through the corridor, she noticed Mary, their poor maid, leaning against the wall with her hand resting on her stomach. Helen's eyes narrowed. She had seen the signs before, but not in her own body. She knew what it meant. Later, she called Mary aside and asked in a cold voice, "Mary, are you pregnant?" Mary trembled, but she could not hide it any longer. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Yes, Ma. It happened the night Sir came home drunk. He mistook me for you, and I was too weak to stop him. I didn't mean for this to happen." Helen's heart pounded in her chest. Her world tilted in an instant. She could already picture the truth tearing her life apart. If David discovered that Mary carried his child, he would abandon her without a second thought. Her fear turned into bitter rage. She thought quickly, and a cruel plan began to form. That night, while the household slept, Helen crept into David's study, took bundles of his money, and carefully hid them inside Mary's bag. The next morning, her scream pierced the air. "Thief! Thief!" she cried. David stormed into the living room to find his wife holding Mary's bag and money spilling out onto the floor. Mary fell to her knees, stunned. "Sir, please, this is not mine. I have never stolen a thing in my life. Please, you must believe me." But Helen wept bitterly, her voice shaking with false pain. "David, this girl has betrayed us. Look at what she has been hiding under our roof." David's face darkened with disappointment. He turned away from Mary, unable to listen to her cries. With one wave of his hand, he ordered her out of the mansion. Mary held her stomach, tears rolling down her face. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell David that the life inside her was his own blood. But her heart failed her. She chose silence, and without a word, she walked out of the gate, alone and rejected, carrying the child of the very man who had thrown her away. Mary walked out of the billionaire's mansion that night with nothing but tears in her eyes and pain in her heart. The same house where she had served faithfully for years had now rejected her. Her feet were bare, her clothes torn, and her stomach heavy with a child. The rain poured down mercilessly, but she had nowhere to go. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering, whispering, "God, please, don't let me lose this baby." She found herself wandering the streets, begging for a place to lay her head. But doors were slammed in her face. Neighbors who once greeted her now mocked her. Some said, "So, the rich man threw you out? That is your reward for thinking you are better than us." Their laughter followed her like daggers in the dark. Each step felt heavier than the last, but Mary refused to break. She pressed her palm against her stomach and whispered to the unborn child, "I will not give up, not for you." Finally, she stumbled upon an uncompleted building. The cold cement floor welcomed her like a cruel bed, but it was all she had. She lay there, clutching her stomach, trying to find comfort in the silence. But what she did not know was that the place was a den for dangerous boys who returned late at night after their evil works. That night, they came in, drunk and violent. They found Mary lying helpless in the corner, like vultures circling a wounded bird. They pounced on her. She cried, begged, and fought, but they molested her, stole the little money she had, and left her bruised and bleeding on the floor. With the last strength in her body, Mary crawled out of the broken building, dragging herself along the road. Her vision was blurred. Her breath was weak, but her will to live pushed her forward. Just then, headlights blinded her eyes. A car screeched and struck her down. As she drifted into darkness, one thought filled her mind: will my child survive this? When Mary opened her eyes again, the sharp smell of medicine filled her nostrils. Her body ached all over, but she was no longer lying on the cold streets. She was in a clean white bed, her wounds neatly dressed. A gentle voice spoke beside her. "You are awake, thank God." She turned her head slowly and saw a man in a doctor's coat. His eyes were filled with concern. "I almost lost you on that road. You were badly hurt, but you are safe now. Don't worry, I will treat you. You don't need to pay." Tears rolled down Mary's cheeks. For the first time since she had been thrown out, someone showed her kindness. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak. "Sir, why? Why would you help me?" The doctor sighed and shook his head. "Because I couldn't just leave you there. You remind me that sometimes even the strongest fall, and all they need is someone to lift them up." His words broke something inside her, and she wept bitterly, her chest heaving with years of pain. When she was strong enough, she told him her story. She told him how she served the billionaire faithfully, how his wife accused her of theft, and how she was thrown into the street while carrying a child in her womb. The doctor listened in silence, his heart burning with anger at the injustice she had suffered. He clenched his fists, but softened his tone. "No woman deserves this. You need to rest, and you need a safe place for your baby." For a moment, hope flickered in Mary's heart, but it died quickly when the doctor took her to his home. His wife's eyes widened in shock and then narrowed with disgust. "Who is this strange woman? Why did you bring her here?" she shouted. The doctor tried to explain, but his wife refused to listen. The house became a battlefield of harsh words and bitterness. At last, the doctor sighed heavily, reached into his pocket, and pressed money into Mary's trembling hands. "I'm sorry. My wife will never agree. Take this and find another place to stay. It's not enough, but at least it will help you survive." Mary stepped out of that house with tears in her eyes once again. Even kindness seemed fleeting in her world. She was back on the streets, alone, carrying the weight of her unborn child, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. Mary wandered the streets with the little money the doctor gave her, clutched tightly in her hand. She was weak, hungry, and heavy with child, but she refused to give up. Day after day, she searched for work, knocking on doors, begging strangers for a chance. Most people turned her away with harsh words. Some laughed at her, others pitied her, but offered nothing. Her heart broke each time. But she whispered to her unborn child, "I will find a way. For you, I must." One afternoon, she stopped in front of a small roadside restaurant. The sweet smell of cooked food filled the air, and her empty stomach growled. Gathering courage, she stepped inside and begged the woman behind the counter, "Madam, please, I need a job. I can clean, I can wash plates, anything at all. I just need work." The restaurant owner, a plump woman with kind eyes, looked her up and down, frowning. "But you are pregnant. How will you cope with hard work in your condition? I don't think I can take you." Mary fell on her knees, her voice breaking. "Please, madam, I will work with all my strength. I have no home, no family. I only want to survive and give this child a chance to live. Please, don't turn me away." Something in her desperate eyes touched the woman's heart. She sighed deeply and finally said, "Get up. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I will give you a chance. You will stay in the small quarters behind the restaurant. You will share with 2 other girls." That night, Mary moved into the tiny room with 2 other workers. One of the girls, Grace, smiled at her warmly. "Don't worry, you'll be fine here," she said, offering her a plate of food. But the other, Anita, narrowed her eyes and scoffed. "So now, they are bringing in beggars to share space with us? Let's see how long you last." Mary ignored the sting of her words. She was too grateful to care. For the first time in weeks, she lay on a bed, even if it was small and rough. The days that followed were hard. Mary scrubbed dishes until her hands bled and swept the floors long after others had gone to rest. But she never complained. Her humility and diligence soon caught the eye of the restaurant owner. "This girl is different," the woman said one day. "She walks like she owns this place." Slowly, Mary began to earn trust, and in that little restaurant, she found a fragile seed of a new beginning. Months passed quickly, and Mary's belly grew bigger by the day. Life in the restaurant was not easy, but at least she had food to eat and a roof over her head. Grace often helped her when the work became too much, but Anita's bitterness only deepened. "Look at you, walking around like a saint," Anita would hiss. "We all know you are just a desperate girl, carrying a bastard child." Mary swallowed her tears and endured the insults, whispering to her unborn baby, "Don't worry, my child. One day, all this pain will make sense." The day of delivery came suddenly. Mary screamed in the tiny room, clutching her stomach as the pain tore through her. Grace ran to fetch help, and the restaurant owner called a midwife. Hours later, Mary's months of suffering ended with the cry of a newborn. She held her baby boy close to her chest. Her eyes were wet with tears of both pain and relief. "You are my gift, my reason to keep living," she whispered, kissing his tiny forehead. She named him David, after his father, the man who would never know the truth. To Mary, the name was not just a memory, it was her silent victory, a promise that her son would rise above the shame and rejection she had endured. As days passed, Mary continued working in the restaurant, balancing the sleepless nights of caring for a baby with the harsh demands of her job. But her dedication did not go unnoticed. The restaurant owner began to trust her more, often praising her honesty and hard work. Soon, she made Mary the supervisor of the other girls, a decision that sparked jealousy in Anita's heart. Grace congratulated her warmly, but Anita's smile never reached her eyes. Each passing day, her bitterness grew like poison. One evening, after closing, Anita slipped bundles of stolen money into Mary's drawer. When the owner discovered the missing money, Anita was quick to speak up. "Madam, I saw Mary near your room last night. Maybe you should check her things." Suspicion fled. The woman stormed into Mary's corner and found the planted money. "So, this is how you repay me," she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. Mary fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Madam, I swear, I didn't take it. Please, believe me. Someone is setting me up." But the restaurant owner's heart had already hardened. That night, in the bitter cold, Mary was thrown out with her tiny baby strapped to her back. She cried silently as she walked the dark streets, clutching her son tightly. "It's just you and me now," she whispered through trembling lips. She searched desperately for shelter until she stumbled upon an uncompleted building. Exhausted, she sat in a corner, rocking David gently as he whimpered. Fear gripped her chest. Memories of her past ordeal in another uncompleted building came rushing back. She promised herself she would not sleep too deeply. At midnight, faint voices drifted from behind the building. Mary froze. Straining her ears, she heard the words that made her blood run cold. "That woman and her baby inside. We can grab them and sell the child. It will fetch good money." Her heart pounded in terror. She pressed her palm gently over David's mouth to keep him from crying. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she knew one sound could give them away. Slowly, she removed her slippers, her bare feet trembling against the rough floor. Inch by inch, she crawled towards a broken window. Her breaths came in quick, shallow gasps, each one threatening to betray her. Just as the men's footsteps grew louder, she squeezed herself and the baby through the opening. Holding David close, she ran into the bush behind the building, her eyes wide with fear. Branches scratched her arms and legs, but she never stopped. She crouched low in the darkness, trembling as she held David's mouth shut to silence his cries. For hours, she stayed hidden, every rustle of the wind sounding like footsteps. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she refused to close her eyes. She prayed silently, begging God for the dawn to come quickly. Finally, as the first rays of morning sunlight pierced the sky, Mary staggered out of the bushes, her baby still in her arms. She looked weak, dirty, and broken. But in her eyes burned the fierce determination of a mother who would not give up. The morning sun was already hot as Mary walked weakly out of the bushes, her baby still clutched tightly to her chest. Her clothes were torn, her face was pale with exhaustion, and her bare feet swollen from thorns and stones. Every step felt like fire, but she kept moving. "Hold on, my son," she whispered to the baby. "Your mother will not give up on you." Her voice shook, but inside her burned a fierce determination to fight, no matter the cost. For days, Mary wandered the streets again. She begged for food outside shops, sometimes receiving scraps, other times harsh words. Yet, even in hunger, she refused to steal. "I will not curse you with a thief's blood," she told David, pressing her lips to his forehead. Nights were the hardest. She wrapped him with her wrapper and sang soft lullabies to cover the sound of her stomach growling. Each time she thought of her past, the mansion, the betrayal, the restaurant, her chest ached. But she reminded herself, as long as this child lives, I still have hope. One afternoon, after hours of searching for work, Mary sat by the roadside with tears streaming down her face. She had only a few naira notes left in her wrapper. Her baby stared, hungry, and she knew she had to act. With trembling hands, she used the money to buy a small measure of rice, oil, and other ingredients. Then, she borrowed a neighbor's old pot and lit a fire by the roadside and began cooking. As the sweet smell rose, passers-by began to stop. "How much?" one man asked, holding out a note. Mary's heart leapt. That night, she went to sleep with the first money she had truly earned on her own. The next day, she did it again. Then the next. Slowly, she began to gather customers. Soon, people along the street came looking for the woman with the delicious rice. She saved every extra naira she could. Within months, she managed to rent a small one-room apartment in a poor neighborhood. It wasn't much, just cracked walls and a leaking roof. But it was theirs. For the first time since leaving the mansion, she and David had a place to call home. As the years passed, Mary's little roadside business grew. She woke early each morning, strapping David to her back while she cooked. At night, she helped him with his homework by candlelight, though she herself could barely read. "You must learn, my son," she told him. "You will be the one to lift us out of this suffering." And David, bright, curious, and full of life, never disappointed her. His teachers spoke of his brilliance. Other parents shook their heads in amazement. And though Mary still struggled, she smiled through her pain. Her sacrifices were shaping a child who would one day change everything. 7 years passed like the blink of an eye. Mary was no longer the frightened, broken girl who had once wandered the streets with nothing but pain in her heart. Life had not become easy, but she had carved a place for herself and her son through sweat, tears, and endless sacrifice. Her little food stand had grown into a popular spot in the neighborhood. Customers often said her hands are blessed and came back daily just to taste her meals. Yet, the true blessing in her life was not her cooking. It was her son, David. From a very young age, David showed signs that he was no ordinary child. At 3, he was already solving puzzles that older children struggled with. At 5, he was asking questions that left even his teachers speechless. By 7, he could repair broken radios, draw complicated designs, and solve math problems far beyond his level. Mary often watched him in wonder, her heart swelling with pride. "You are truly special, my son," she whispered. "The world will know your name one day." David was not only intelligent, but also kind-hearted. Each day after school, he helped his mother at the food stand, serving customers with a polite smile. Neighbors admired him, saying, "That boy will grow into a great man." But Mary guarded her heart, praying every night that his greatness would not be destroyed by the same cruelty that once destroyed her own dream. She still carried the pain of her past, but she hid it well, choosing instead to live for her son's future. One evening, after closing the food stand, Mary and David sat in their small room eating dinner. The flickering light of their old television filled the room. Suddenly, the newsreader's voice caught David's attention. "Breaking news. The largest company in Nigeria, David Holdings, faces bankruptcy. Years of financial mismanagement have finally caught up, and the company is expected to be sold by the end of the month." The camera flashed images of the company's proud logo. Then, the billionaire himself, David's father. Mary froze. Her spoon dropped into her plate as she stared at the screen. The past she had buried deep inside her heart came rushing back. The mansion, the betrayal, the pain of being thrown out. It all returned in one sharp sting. She quickly turned her face away. But little David was staring intently at the screen, his young eyes burning with determination. "Mama," he said firmly, "I can save that company." Mary blinked, shocked. "What are you saying, my son?" David picked up his worn school notebook and flipped it open, showing her sketches, numbers, and designs he had been working on for weeks. "I have been studying their mistakes. I know what they are doing wrong, and I know how to fix it. Mama, please, take me there. Let me help them." Mary's heart twisted in fear. She knew the truth, that the man on the screen was his father. She had sworn never to cross paths with him again. "No, my son," she said softly, tears filling her eyes. "That place is not for us. Forget about them." But David shook his head stubbornly, his small fists clenched. "Mama, I was born for this. If they fail, many people will lose their jobs. I can help them. Please, Mama, believe in me." Mary looked at her son, her chest heavy with emotion. She saw the same fire in his eyes, that once burned in the man who had broken her heart. But unlike his father, David's fire was pure, full of hope and compassion. She hugged him tightly, torn between fear and pride. In her heart, she knew destiny was knocking at their door. David's brilliance could not be hidden. In school, he was the star student every teacher talked about. During one mathematics competition, he solved problems in minutes that left even the judges speechless. This boy is gifted beyond measure, his teacher told Mary one afternoon. He doesn't just solve problems, he sees patterns the rest of us cannot. You must nurture him. Mary smiled humbly, but inside, her heart trembled. She knew her son was extraordinary, but she also feared the dangers that came with standing out. At home, David often spent hours sketching in his notebooks. His small hands would draw diagrams of machines he imagined. Water pumps for poor villages, faster cooking stoves for mothers like his, even ideas to improve factories he had never stepped foot in. Mary would watch him, sometimes with tears in her eyes. "My child," she whispered once, "how did God put so much wisdom in such a little boy?" David only smiled and hugged her, saying, "Mama, one day I will build something so big you will never have to walk again." The neighbors too began to notice. One evening, when a neighbor's generator broke down, little David offered to help. They laughed at first, but within minutes, he had opened the machine, tightened a few wires, and brought it back to life. The crowd cheered, lifting him onto their shoulders. "This boy is a miracle," they shouted. Mary watched from a distance, pride glowing in her eyes, but also fear swelling in her chest. She knew greatness often attracted envy, and envy had nearly destroyed her once. So when David saw the news about the Billionaires company and declared that he could save it, Mary's whole body stiffened. The very thought of walking back into the world she had escaped made her shiver. She remembered Helen's cruel laughter, the harsh words, the humiliation of being thrown out. She remembered standing in the cold, clutching her unborn baby, with nowhere to go. Her voice shook as she told her son, "Forget them. Forget their company. Forget everything about that world." But David would not forget. In the days that followed, he pressed her again and again, showing her his designs, his plans, his confidence. "Mama, please, this is my chance to help. This is why I was born." His words cut through her like a knife. Each night, as she lay beside him, Mary prayed desperately for guidance. Should she protect him from the past or let destiny take its course? Little did she know that no matter her choice, fate was already weaving a path that would bring her face to face with the man who had once destroyed her life. The day came heavy with tension. The news spread everywhere. David Holdings, once the pride of the nation, was finally collapsing. Reporters gathered at the gates of the tall glass building, waiting to capture history. Inside the boardroom, the billionaire David sat with weary eyes. His face pale from sleepless nights. Papers were spread out before him. Contracts were ready to be signed. His empire, built with sweat and ambition, was about to be sold. The men in suits whispered among themselves, their voices thick with greed. At that very moment, Mary stood outside the same building, her heart pounding violently in her chest. She held her son's hand tightly, her steps unsteady. She had resisted for days, but David's persistence had broken through her fear. Now, here she was, back in the world she had run from. She pulled her wrapper closer and whispered, "My son, maybe this is a mistake. Let's go back." But the boy looked up at her, his small eyes blazing with courage. "Mama, please, just trust me." Inside, the billionaire picked up his pen. Just as he lowered it towards the paper, the boardroom doors burst open. Gasps filled the air as a little boy rushed in, his school bag slung across his back. "Stop!" the boy shouted, his voice echoing through the room. "Don't sign that paper. I can save your company." The room erupted into murmurs. "Who is this child? Security!" The guards moved to grab him, but David's hand shut up. Something about the boy's eyes froze him. "Let the child speak," he commanded. The little boy dropped his bag on the table, pulled out crumpled notebooks filled with sketches, figures, and designs. He spread them out with trembling hands. "You are losing money because your machines waste too much energy. You are paying for what you don't use. But if you fix it this way," he pointed to his diagrams with confidence far beyond his years, "you can save millions. You don't have to sell." The billionaire leaned forward, shock on his face, as he studied the drawings. His board members crowded around, their mouths open in disbelief. This could work," one whispered. "But how did this boy see what we could not?" Another shook his head in shame. The billionaire's eyes lingered on the boy, his chest tightening with something he could not explain. "Who are you?" he asked softly. The boy hesitated, glancing at the doorway where his mother stood, trembling, tears in her eyes. Slowly, she stepped forward, her voice breaking as she whispered, "He is your son." The boardroom fell into stunned silence. The pen slipped from the billionaire's hand, his whole body trembling. His eyes darted from Mary's face, the face he once threw out into the cold, to the boy who carried his very blood. In that moment, the mighty billionaire felt his empire crumble, not because of money, but because of the truth. The silence in the boardroom was so heavy that even the ticking clock on the wall sounded like thunder. The billionaire's lips trembled as he stared at Mary. Memories he had buried came rushing back. The night he stumbled home drunk, the faint image of Mary's tearful eyes, the day he had ordered her thrown out. His chest tightened painfully. Could it be true? Could this boy really be his son? Mary stood at the door, clutching her wrapper with both hands. Her knees were weak, but her voice, though trembling, carried the weight of years of pain. "Yes, David, he is your son, the child you never knew, the child you cast away when you cast me out." Gasps filled the room as board members exchanged shocked looks. All eyes turned to the billionaire, waiting for his response. The billionaire rose slowly from his seat, his powerful frame now bent under guilt. He walked towards the boy, each step heavy, his heart pounding like a drum. He knelt before the child and studied his face closely, the sharp jawline, The fiery eyes. It was like looking into a mirror of his younger self. His hands shook as he touched the boy's shoulder. My son, his voice broke. Forgive me. But before the moment could settle, the doors of the boardroom flew open again. Helen stormed in, her face pale with fury. What is going on here? She demanded. Her eyes fell on Mary, then on the boy, and instantly fear gripped her. She knew the truth had come knocking. David, don't listen to her lies, Helen cried, rushing forward. This woman is a thief, a liar. She stole from us and ran away. That boy cannot be yours. The billionaire turned sharply, his eyes dark. Enough, Helen, he thundered, his voice shaking the walls. The board members froze, watching the drama unfold. Mary's tears flowed freely as she spoke. I never stole. You know I never did. She framed me because she feared the truth. The room erupted with whispers, all eyes darting between Helen and the billionaire. Helen's face twisted in desperation. She's lying. She's trying to destroy us. But her words fell flat. The billionaire's gaze lingered on her, suspicion rising like a storm. For years, he had trusted her blindly. But now, the cracks in her perfect marks were beginning to show. And deep in his heart, he knew Mary's tears were far more powerful than Helen's screams. The boy, little David, stepped forward, his small voice cutting through the noise. Papa, he said softly, and the billionaire's heart shattered into pieces. There, in front of the entire board members, the mighty man, who once ruled with pride, felt tears sting his eyes. He reached out and pulled his son into his arms, holding him tightly, as if afraid to ever let go again. Helen's mouth fell open, her world crashing down before her very eyes. For the first time, she realized her carefully guarded secrets, that she had no womb, that her life in the mansion was built on lies, was standing at the edge of exposure. Helen's chest rose and fell as she tried to hold her ground. The room was spinning with whispers, and her voice cracked as she shouted, You are all being fooled. That boy is not your son. She turned desperately to the board members. Can't you see? She's after his wealth. But her words only fueled the storm. The billionaire's eyes narrowed, rage and betrayal burning inside him. For years, he had trusted Helen, protected her, and believed every word she said. But now, Mary's pain stood before him like undeniable truth. Helen, he said coldly, his voice low but dangerous. Enough of your games. If that boy is not mine, then why does he carry my blood in his eyes? Why does he speak with my fire? Helen staggered back, her lips trembling. She searched for words, but none came. For the first time, her confidence cracked. One of the older board members, a man who had known the billionaire for years, leaned forward. Sir, perhaps a test will clear this matter. If the boy is yours, science will confirm it. The room murmured in agreement. Helen's face drained of color. She knew the truth. If a test was done, her web of lies would unravel. No, she shouted, her voice shrill with desperation. There will be no tests. This is all a trap. The billionaire's face hardened. Why, Helen? Why are you afraid of the truth? The weight of the moment pressed down on her. Her secret, the one she had hidden for years, the one that bound her to the mansion, was slipping out of her hands. Finally, her control snapped. Because I cannot give you children, she screamed, her voice echoing through the boardroom. Gasps erupted, filling the air like thunder. Helen's hands shook as tears streamed down her face. Yes, it's true. I have no womb. I could never give you a child. And if you find out Mary's son is yours, everything I have will be gone. The billionaire staggered back, as though struck by lightning. The truth he had never suspected now stood naked before him. His eyes burned with both sorrow and fury as he turned towards Helen. All these years, he said slowly, his voice breaking, you lived beside me with lies? You watched me cast out the innocent mother of my child and you said nothing? Helen fell to her knees, clutching his legs and weeping. Please, David, I did it because I loved you. I was afraid of losing you. But the billionaire pulled away, his eyes cold as stone. You never loved me. You only loved the mansion, the power, the name. You ruined my home and nearly destroyed my future. His voice thundered through the room, finer and sharp. You are no longer my wife. Get out. The board members watched in stunned silence as Helen collapsed to the floor. Her world shattered. In that moment, the empire she had guarded so fiercely slipped through her fingers like dust, and Mary, the woman she once mocked and destroyed, now stood tall, her son in her arms, her tears not of shame, but of justice long delayed. The boardroom was silent after Helen's exit. The weight of years of lies still hung in the air, but something greater now demanded attention. The boy. David the billionaire turned slowly, and his eyes locked on the child who had just saved his empire. For a long moment, words failed him. His heart, so hardened by wealth, power, and betrayal, now trembled at the sight of the son he never knew he had. Mary stood uncertain, clutching the boy's shoulders, as though shielding him from another storm. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not of weakness, but of fear. Fear that this moment, too, could end in rejection. But the boy, small and brave, looked straight at David. I told you I can help you, he whispered softly. Because you're my father. Those words broke David completely. He stepped forward, his strong hands trembling as they reached out. Slowly, he knelt in front of the boy, lowering himself in a way no one had ever seen before. His voice cracked as he spoke. Forgive me, son. Forgive me, Mary. I wronged you both in ways I can never undo. But if you will allow me, I will spend the rest of my life making it right. Mary's tears flowed harder. For years, she had carried shame, pain, and rejection. For years, she had struggled alone in the shadows, while Helen basked in riches that weren't hers. And now, standing in the same room where she had once been cast out, she was finally vindicated. Her voice shook as she replied, I don't need your riches, David. All I ever wanted was for you to know your son and for him to never feel unwanted. Later that night, Mary and her son walked back into the mansion, this time not as servants, not as outcasts, but as family. The gates that once closed against her now opened wide, and the staff bowed respectfully. Inside, the boy ran through the halls with laughter, his small feet echoing in the home that should have been his from birth. Mary stood by the doorway, her eyes misty. The mansion felt the same, but everything had changed. She no longer carried shame. She carried victory. David approached her, his hand gentle as he placed it on her shoulder. "Mary," he said quietly, "this house has been empty all along. Today, it finally becomes a home." And for the first time in years, Mary smiled. A smile that spoke of scars, survival, and hope. For though the journey had been cruel, destiny had finally turned in her favor. Thank you for watching this video. Life teaches us that no matter how long the truth is hidden, it will always rise and set people free. Never let lies or fear steal your destiny. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can be inspired. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember, destiny may delay, but it's never denied.